Hello there. Welcome to this episode of Force Ghost Conversations. This is your host, Anthony King, and this week I'm going to take a deep dive look into the first episode of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. Now, before we get started, I'm inviting you to join the conversation with us. We can be found on Twitter at Force Ghost Pod. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok just by searching Force Ghost Conversations. Look forward to connecting with you on those platforms, and also please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on your listening site of choice. And without further ado, it is time to gather around the campfire for some Force Ghost Conversations. Okay, everyone, welcome back to Force Ghost Conversations. Now, this episode is going to be slightly different from the episodes that you're probably used to hearing thus far on Force Ghost Conversations. If you follow us on our social media channels over the last couple of days, obviously you will know that we were at Star Wars Celebration. We were posting a lot of content on those channels, various pictures and announcements, what have you. Basically anything that we were a part of or interacted with over the course of the weekend and even the week leading up to, because we did go to Disneyland and Galaxy's Edge, which was an amazing experience. But because of the influx of so much stuff that we experienced and that transpired over the course of over that week, we now are going to be playing a little bit of catch up here on Force Ghost Conversations, and as a result, and to the benefit of you listeners at home, as I announced, I believe, was it 2 days ago or yesterday? We're going to be doing 2 episodes a week of Force Ghost Conversations in order to get us all caught up here. So until the time is deemed by myself that we are all caught up and ready to go, there will be 2 episodes of Force Ghost Conversations. So be sure to subscribe to us on your podcast listening site of choice. Tell your friends all about Force Ghost Conversations, and let's continue to build this amazing community that we have together here. So let's just dive right into it. As I alluded in the preamble, this episode is all about the first episode of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series that debuted on Disney Plus. Technically, last Friday, May 27th, depending on where you're at in the world, it may have released at midnight Eastern Standard Time, maybe 9 o'clock Pacific Time on May 26th, that Thursday. But that's what this episode is going to be about. So we're going to, I know they released the first two at the same time, but we're going to take our time with this series. We're going to let it develop. We're going to enjoy and break down every aspect of it, and celebrate the really, really wonderful work that has been done on this series. So we're going to start right from the top and just and go into episode 1 now. Because this is our Wednesday or midweek show, I'm not gonna shoehorn myself into a day of the week or a time, right? It's a time or day of the week that our extra episode per week will be released. You can typically expect our Sundays to stay on schedule with that, but based off of my schedule, whether it be work um, or my grad school commitments, hopefully we'll stick to about a Wednesday, but expect a midweek here. But along those same lines as well, we will not have any Cloud City gossip segments for this episode. So we're just going to go straight into the Kenobi notes here that I have. I've rewatched the episode 3 times now, and really I wanted to start this episode with my first experience watching the Kenobi series. Now, if you were following along on our channels, particularly on Twitter, maybe Instagram and Facebook, you would know that we were very fortunate, both my wife and I, to attend the red carpet world premiere of Obi-Wan Kenobi that debuted at Star Wars Celebration. We were so fortunate to be at that first panel on Thursday, that Lucasfilm Showcase panel, where they made all these major announcements, showcase trailers. John Williams came out and played. Harrison Ford was there. We got to hear the Obi-Wan Kenobi played for the first time by a live orchestra to an audience. played, frankly, for the first time ever. Like, it was the first time it was actually even unveiled in any way, shape, or form to an audience. And because we got to be at that panel, Ewan McGregor, during the Obi-Wan Kenobi session of that showcase, said he invited all of everybody in that room to come back that evening to be a part of the red carpet world premiere experience and to watch the first two episodes together in this exuberant, ginormous stadium, basically that was at the arena, if you will, at the Anaheim Convention Center, with a wonderful sound system, a huge screen. So that was really my first experience watching that, and boy, was it wonderful. Let it get alone getting to hear the theme for the first time with John Williams. We're going to talk about that whole panel. I believe later this week we'll discuss that. My wife and I, what it was like to be in that room, all the cool announcements and things that came out. So that'll be your Sunday episode of Force Ghost Conversations this week. Um, but it was really, really immaculate and wonderful. So we're just very fortunate that we were able to be a part of that room and experience. And we know that not a lot of people, if you weren't in the room or in one of the side uh, uh, stages that they live streamed it on, you didn't get to see it, unfortunately, which is a real bummer. I'm a little saddened to hear that, and that's just generally what they did with the first panel for all of Star Wars Celebrations. That first 11 o'clock Pacific time panel, no one got to see those, so we only got into that first one via the lottery, and frankly, we got very lucky that that was the one that we were going to be a part of. So we really, really got lucky with that one. So I just wanted to get into the episode here then and start to talk about all the cool things that really came about and what it means for the Star Wars galaxy at large. So I've got like 4 pages of notes here because I think if you listened to our episode last week, you know how much this character means to me, the series, what it does for me being a prequel fan, and that experience that I had growing up with all this. So we're just gonna talk through this a bit here. So the episode starts out with of course, the a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away um, line that typically pre-starts all of the Star Wars saga films, and I believe even Rogue One and Solo also have that as well. And to my knowledge, at this point, we don't that never happened for the Book of Boba Fett or the Mandalorian. Any episodes of those, so frankly, that really gives it a cinematic feel. And when we were in the premiere, experiencing the first two episodes for the first time, um, that was kind of like my big takeaway for the series overall, whether it be the writing, the pacing, the look and feel of it all. It just felt like I was watching a movie. It did, you know. I'm not dogging the Book of Boba Fett or the Mandalorian whatsoever, but those episodes seem serialized in a way, right? Each episode is its own contained adventure to a large degree. Um, and sometimes it's like you watch it week to week and that's the episode of the week, right? Um, to me, the way that the Obi-Wan Kenobi series has been thus far, and at the time of this recording, I've seen up to part 3 of the series, so I'm all caught up, and it just seems like it's one long movie in a way, in the way that the others don't. So you may argue against me on that point, but that's just kind of how I've been feeling at this point, and that just seeing that line at the beginning really added some credence to that. And for those of you watching at home on Disney Plus, I really felt that recap that they did, don't skip it at all. It is a wonderful, really well done encapsulation of the entire prequel trilogy story, which at its nuts and bolts is basically the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker, and it really gives you a sense of where Obi-Wan Kenobi is at the start of this series, which does take place 10 years later than Revenge of the Sith, and especially Order 66, which is noted at the beginning of the episode. So, as just an aside, before we get into the meat and potatoes of the episode overall, I did love that the Lucasfilm intro that they usually do there with the great LTD logo. Um, it had like a sand color to it instead of like this typical green or I believe it's been silver lately, a bluish silver. Um, it just really sets the stage for what is to come. Obviously, he's going to be on Tatooine. watching over Luke, and that's where we will discover Obi-Wan at this point in his life. As I mentioned earlier, Order 66 is how this series starts, and uh, especially being in that theater, I could tell you it was a big gut punch to the crowd. Like, we were not expecting it to go that way whatsoever. Um, it would just it just comes out of nowhere and it blindsides you. I have seen the theories thus far about Reva being potentially one of the children from the opening, which I think is very fascinating, and it's definitely a possibility. Otherwise, I'm not sure if they would show that sequence just like placing a time and place for for the series, which could very well be the case too. But just keep that in the back of your mind that that is a potentiality that I'm giving some credence to that as well. I think that's a very plausible theory as we go throughout the series. And in the Order 66 flashback too, I just really want to note that I think that clone armor for the 501st Legion that's invading the Jedi Temple looks really good. That's a pretty good, fantastic looking armor, very shiny. Um, if you're into cosplay, which I am personally a fan of, I love seeing all the work that people do and the creativity. That's a sheen and a shine to those armors that I want to see people incorporate later on in their cosplays. So then after that, there's the 10 years later. Uh, Letting us know the time and place of this in the Star Wars timeline. So pretty much smack dab in the middle between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. The first kind of images that we see are of the Grand Inquisitor, the fifth brother, and the third sister, aka Reva, um, who land at this. I believe this is probably Mos Eisley, in Tatooine. It hasn't really been confirmed yet, as far as my understanding is. I don't think it's Mos Espa. So I think it's Mos Eisley, or it could be another outpost to Tatooine. Who knows? But I will say they all look menacing. One of the really cool things that we got to experience on the red carpet premiere was the on the red carpet they had all of these. They basically had all the outfits for the characters out on display in glass cases, and as you're walking into the arena to find your seat for the cinema, it was so cool to walk past those. And I believe we have a they did a video on the Obi-Wan Kenobi Twitter site, and I retweeted that on our Force Ghost Conversations page. So be sure to go check that out as you are able. Then, so let me see where we catch up here. I just want to talk more about that opening sequence. I really like that kind of monologue that the Grand Inquisitor had with that barkeep, basically, where he says this great line there. He's like, the Jedi hunt themselves, um, and basically, I knew it was one of the Safdie brothers. Uh, that was the Jedi, just because um, I remember seeing his face so vividly from the casting photos that they did, where they announced like the entire cast of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I basically have studied that image for basically a year and a half now. Um, so it's just really cool to kind of like preemptively imagine what's going to happen, and then of course the scene plays out as it does. But the Grand Inquisitor does note that patience is the key to hunting Jedi. Their compassion leaves a trail. Again, that monologue is just excellent. It is deliciously terrifying. Rupert Friend is really good in this sequence, and just overall as the Grand Inquisitor. Looking forward to seeing more of him in this series, and just certainly more of him acting. He's a actor I was not aware of before this series, um, so hopefully he's going to be involved a lot more. And he really had some heartfelt comments for the fans. Really appreciative of their support, both at the premiere, at the panel for Lucasfilm Showcase, and I believe he was at the celebration closing ceremonies on last Sunday, again having more heartfelt conversations with fans about how wonderful they are and stuff like that. So it's really great. um I I was really loving how they zoomed in on his eyes, and just to see that he has like the Sith eyes, the red and yellow. Really reminiscent of his character from Rebels, which is a big standout for me. You can already see at this point in the dynamic between the Inquisitors that they definitely have a conflict amongst themselves, which makes sense to me as they are followers of the dark side, which is by nature deceitful. They're always looking for power and trying to one up each other. Um, which is generally why, if you watch Star Wars Rebels, which is where they were first introduced to Star Wars back in 2015 and 16, 17, even, I believe, probably, um, they do have this kind of like. That's why the Jedi are able to outsmart them and stuff like that. It's because they always want that personal satisfaction and glory, right? It's never about them working together as a team, which is the complete opposite of what like the Jedi do, or the Rebel Alliance, or the Resistance, right? It's like they're always trying to work together as a team, find each other's strengths, uh, limit each other's weaknesses and stuff like that. Whereas the singular path is almost the more of the way of the dark side. Makes sense. Um, I think it's great from the start how it's Reva is clearly known for having a fixation on getting the big prize, aka Obi-Wan Kenobi. Uh, I had questions at the beginning here as to what does she really want, and as we learn later on, she says, "I'm due what I'm owed." Uh, it sounds to me like she's trying to gain favor, to gain position, to gain status, to move up as an inquisitor, which again just falls in line with what the nature of the dark side really is. It's deceitful, it's seeking power, it's never quenching that thirst for that. And she's trying to grab the big stick that is waiting out there in wake for Star Wars, especially this time of the timeline. So it appears that Obi-Wan has hidden himself amidst a fish packing factory assembly line. I don't know what they want to refer to it as, but you can really see the pain in Ewan's performance in his eyes, especially that he wants to help people, but he seems to be broken, a shadow of the figure that he once was. And I think that's really important to note as we go throughout the course of the episode. That's really where we start with Obi-Wan, a broken man that is doubtful of himself and his abilities, and is living in the shame and fear of the past and the sins of what he wasn't able to do. Very important, very important. You get a little first hint of the Obi-Wan Kenobi theme written by John Williams on his way to his Eope, which is, I believe, again in Mos Eisley. I'm not entirely sure. We get to his home then, and it's no hut yet for Obi-Wan that we see in Episode 4, but he evidently just lives among an open cave, which is also cool. I love the nighttime shots there that you'll see later on. And we get a little interaction with the Jawa named Tika. How cool is it that we get to recontextualize now that Obi-Wan Kenobi actually bought and gave the toy to Luke, the plain model figure that he plays with in A New Hope. And there's just great good humor with the Jawa Tika as well. With Obi-Wan apparently reeking, obviously makes sense with him being around so much fish over the course of the day. Tika is stealing parts from Obi-Wan and then selling them back. They're just doing great banter. Star Wars doesn't always have to be super serious. It's allowed to be funny and have a good time with itself. But with that comedic moment, there is the adverse side of it too, where we see Obi-Wan at nighttime experiencing these nightmares, and you can tell that the sins of the past still haunt Obi-Wan regularly. And frankly, how could they not? How could they not? When you are literally the person who was in charge of the person that turned the galaxy into this utter darkness. Uh, how could you not? How could you not be cognizant of that? So he calls out to Qui-Gon for guidance, and there's no reply just yet. Put a pin on that. If I'm speculating a little responsibly here, I think it's probably a fair bet that you may hear a little bit of Qui-Gon by the end of this series. But I could watch, frankly, Obi-Wan traverse the Dune Sea all the time. What a gift this series really is to Star Wars fans. I'm just already geeking out at the wonderful prospects that it has, and I love that we're getting more characters from the prequel era, an era that is so impactful to me as a Star Wars fan and important to me just as a person who consumes pop culture and entertainment. This is really, really a gift for Star Wars fans. We get those images from the trailer that we saw of of Luke and Uncle Owen, with Obi-Wan watching over him. And it's just great that Luke is pretending like he's flying off on a distant adventure, getting off the rock of Tatooine. The Obi-Wan there, when the camera pans away from him as he's putting his binoculars, space binoculars down, whatever you want to call them. It looks like you can see the pain in his eyes as Luke clearly reminds him of a young Anakin. So very touching there. So the Jedi from the intro scene when he escaped is called Nari. He tracks down Obi-Wan as he's walking with the Yopi back to his hut, or not his hut, but I guess his cave at this point. Obi-Wan refuses to help him and tells him to be brave, bury his lightsaber, stay hidden, and live a normal life. Obi-Wan even goes as far to say, "The fight is done. We've lost." Nari responds back with, "You were once a great Jedi, and what happened to you, basically?" And Obi-Wan is like, "The time of the Jedi is over. Let it go." Obi-Wan is clearly a broken Jedi, a broken person, and he needs to regain that was once lost of himself. And that makes sense for where he would be after kind of being mostly isolated and trying to stay hidden and believing in this cause that he has and the purpose he has set forth for him. But yeah, it's really interesting where his mind is at this point. They did a great job establishing that at this point in the series. So just wonderful, wonderful, well done job to Deborah Chow and team. On the flip side of that, we get Alderaan. We're going to Alderaan, baby. Natalie Holt's score in the dressing scene that follows is immaculate. I love that good switcheroo humor with the person that is trying to play a little Leia, and then we actually get to see a young Leia walking about. What a great introduction to an amazing character. And this is the point where we, aside from her being a baby, being born, and then going to Alderaan, this is the youngest we get to actually see Leia in canon. And we get the great introduction to the droid Lola, and loved how she was just enjoying ships and flying and imagining adventures far away, and reminded me a lot of Anakin. So that was pretty cool to see the lineage connection there, even though she had not met her father to that point. When she finally gets caught by her mother, Brea Organa, Brea has this wonderful line for Leia when she's kind of complaining about, all I do is just wave, and she's like, basically, you get out of this what you put into it, which is good for frankly anything in life. As people that we look to Star Wars for our mythology, right? It's like the effort that you put into it is what you're going to get out of it, right? Typically nothing ever comes super easy. You need to put practice in it, work hard for things, strive for excellence where you can, put in the time and hours and effort, and generally you will, generally on the other hand, you'll get something out of it. So that's what this is a good teaching moment for Leia here as to how she can be impactful for the galaxy and put forth a good effort at the end of the day. So then we flip back to Obi-Wan. Uncle Owen throws the toy back at him, and they have a very great, candid and discussion with each other here. Owen says, "You only care if he's showing." He claps back at Obi-Wan, saying like he trained his father. Frankly, Joel Edgerton as Uncle Owen is really great in this sequence. He really wants him just to leave him with his family on the farm where he belongs. He just thinks that Obi-Wan is really up to no good. He's just dragging on attention, and causing all these problems for the family, in my opinion. And then, of course, Reva, the third sister, and the fifth brother basically walk through this area of town. Obi-Wan's hidden in the corner, but they go straight up to Reva goes right up to Uncle Owen, basically, and it just shows how fascinated as to how close they got to discovering Luke. Reva says, and it's like basically it's interrogation of this section of the town. She says, "Hands go first," and that way you won't, when you reach for anything, you think of us. and then she cuts off that lady's hand that tries to speak back to her, and it just shows how menacing that they are. Uh, Reva clearly has a fire to her that makes her a very, very powerful dark side agent. Very powerful dark side agent here. Let me look through here on my notes. Um, if it weren't for basically if it wasn't for the fifth brother, they might have killed Uncle Owen right there, and I believe that Reva would have, as she lets it up to the town to decide if they want to share any Jedi information, because they're still searching for Nari at this point. So Reva thinks, again, as I mentioned earlier, that she will gain what she's owed by capturing Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we'll have to watch more to find out what that really means in context. Uh, we flip over back to Alderaan. There's some Bail Organa, ladies and gentlemen. Jimmy Smits is back in the role as Bail Organa for the first time since Rogue One in 2016. Bail wants to keep working in the Senate. Clearly, he's talking about slave labor and working on the taxation of the Outer Rim in this meeting here. Clearly, the other person in the conversation, who I believe is Brea's cousin's um, or his sister. It's her. It's her. I would assume that's Brea's sister's husband is who he's talking to. So I think that would be technically Bail's brother-in-law, if I understand correctly, based off of my understanding of the episode. But it's really cool. Leia obviously lays it into her cousin. She tears him down a few notches after he's a little bit rude and disrespectful to both her and the droid in her company. But overall, I think that they really, really wrote Leia's parts very well in this sequence and in the series so far. If I'm going to spoil a little ahead for all of us, they've done a great job figuring figuring out what it means to be a young Leia Organa. But I think that Bail really did a great job as well, having this great intimate fatherly moment with her afterwards, where he just connects with her on a deeper level. He understands the messaging to say to her in order to get to her in this moment, as she's basically being told that she needs to apologize and do better, as people will look to her for leadership eventually. Bale wanted to chase Purgle, of course, the flying whales from Star Wars Rebels, but he decided to chase Brea Organa instead. Leia doesn't want to be the senator, which basically is why Bale responds back with, which is why you will probably be one of the best. And I agree with that. Those who typically do not want power or do not search for it are the ones that should be in positions of power. That's generally a good rule of thumb. He also says there are many ways to lead. You just have to find yours. And whether that means being a part of the Rebel Alliance, or a general in the Resistance, or a part of the Young Senate, or the part of the New Republic, Leia is a born leader. And Brea then jokes later on, when Leia runs away again, I know who she's like, which is a fun little reference to, I believe, to Padme. But who of all people is kidnapping Leia? It's Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which is pretty wild if you ask me. I immediately caught that at the premiere, and I was like, "Wait a second, that's Flea." I personally am a big fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They just had a great new album come out that I enjoyed. So if you're into them, go listen to that. John Frusciante is back in the band, and they're going out on tour, I believe, pretty soon here. So if you're a fan of that, go check them out. But I know Flea is in the Star Wars now. It's a fun. Also, if you think about it, there was a reference to Flea's character from Back to the Future. I believe part 2 or 3. His name is Needles, and that's a reference that they make in Solo when they're doing the Kessel Run. So just fun little connective tissue across the board here. So Obi-Wan has to pull out the old comlink again, and who is asking for his help but none other than Brea and Bail Organa. Leia needs Obi-Wan, and Bail really lays it into him. Only you know how important she is, Obi-Wan. She is as important as he is, aka Luke. Obi-Wan clearly, though, is afraid He's not the man that he once was. He's broken. He's shattered as a person. He's had to live with this guilt and this loss and just the responsibility of everything that happened over the last 10 years. And then Obi-Wan says, "I'm afraid or I'm not the Jedi. Not who I used to be." Is the exact quote there. Sorry. Find someone else, and then closes out the comm link. Frankly, to me, this scene is super, super duper important overall for both Obi-Wan Kenobi, the character, and then the series at large. This is something we've talked about as fans a lot, is we knew that he was going to leave the planet of Tatooine, but for me and for others around the world, and maybe for you at home as well, it was really important for me that he needed a really, really, really good reason by which to leave Tatooine, to leave that post that he was bestowed upon by Yoda and team at the end of Revenge of the Sith. And frankly, that is a good. I couldn't think of a better reason to leave for a distress call than to go help Leia, Luke's sister. Nari is killed and hanged in a city, um, as we see later on in the episode. Then Bail later, I assume the next day, as we can tell, he came to talk some sense into Obi-Wan after he shut down the call and said, "Find someone else." Uh, he said, you know, Bail also delivers more truth in this sequence. This isn't about the boy. This is more about Obi-Wan living with his own, coming to the realization and living with his own defeats and failures and growing beyond them, learning beyond them, becoming a different person, becoming older, more mature, wiser, learning from those mistakes. And I get it. It's hard as an individual to get over those sometimes. Sometimes we take longer than we should, and all that. It's very relatable, it's very real. And sometimes we need that person like a Bail Organa in our lives to tell us what is really reality. Like, how can we move on? How can we push forward? He says, "You couldn't save Anakin, but you can save her. For her, one last fight." And he talks enough sense into Obi-Wan to get him out there, get him going. Um, it flips back to Leia, of course, for a little bit there. But I love how Leia is already trying to escape her captors. It's just something that I've always thought of, and I've agreed. I believe Dave Filoni is one that has always said this too. But I've kind of had that same image or thought in my head too, that especially in the Death Star, when Leia is in the cell block, be waiting to be terminated. I have a full belief that she has a plan for how to get out, and it's nice to see that like the roots of that theory are kind of laid in this scene here, where she's making every effort whatsoever to get out. So finally, Obi-Wan is pulling the lightsaber case out of the sand, as he told Nari to do earlier on. Both his lightsaber and Anakin's blade are there that he will eventually pass down to Luke. And I believe that's also the same case that he'll have in his hut later on as well. But also just fun nod to burying lightsabers in the sand. So Luke and Leia's lightsaber eventually gets the same treatment in episode 9 at the end of Rise of Skywalker. And it's just really great to see that connective tissue again. Turns out Reva is the one that put out the order for the kidnapping and hired these. I guess these are technically like bounty hunters or kidnappers. I don't really know what you would want to define their occupation as being. They're basically bad guys. Let's just call them what they are. She has done her research though, and she mentioned earlier you're not looking in the right places for Kenobi. Clearly, she's done her research. She's looked into his past people that he's dealt with, and laid down the groundwork here for how to find unique ways to potentially bring him out, and evidently this gets him going. So the relationship that he has with Bail is enough to see this through. Obi-Wan then accepts the call and is back on the hero's journey, as we see him heading onto that transport ship on his way to Daiyu, which Bail told him that they were taking the girl to, Leia. And we get a glimpse of that lightsaber on his belt again. The crowd literally lit up, went blazes on fire when we could see that lightsaber on him again. It was so cool, incredible, and just overall, I found this to be a fantastic episode. I hope that you all enjoyed it as well. And finally, just one last thought. It was so amazing and incredible to see Ewan's name once again in that Star Wars blue font as the credits were rolling. This has been a true joy of an episode. I'm very fortunate to have that wonderful experience to see it in that segment of the Anaheim Convention Center and the arena for the premiere. It's just what a wonderful experience that I will cherish for the rest of my life. And I hope that you all at home, or maybe you watched it in a different setting, got to really dive in and experience this show for what it is. Uh, we got 5 more episodes to go. We're going to break it down week to week here on Forest Ghost Conversations. Be sure to follow us on all the social media channels: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. We're going to be here for it all, and just celebrating the wonderful goodness that this series is, and appreciating every step of the way. But with that, we'll be back later this week with another episode of Force Ghost Conversations. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us on your listening site of choice. Tell your friends about Force Ghost Conversations if they're hopping on the Obi-Wan Kenobi train too. It's going to be a fun ride, and we're going to see you all the way through the destination and beyond. But with that, everyone, may the Force be with you. We'll be back later on with more goodness about Obi-Wan Kenobi, Star Wars Celebration, Galaxy's Edge, you name it. This is your place for all things Star Wars. Take care, everyone.